The rain hammered against the tall windows of Celestial, one of Manhattan's most exclusive restaurants. Victoria Monroe pressed her back against the brick wall outside, clutching her portfolio tighter as water dripped from her dark hair onto her worn jacket. She had been walking for blocks, searching for any place that might hire a struggling artist to wait tables. Her shoes were soaked through, and her last $20 felt heavy in her pocket. The interview at the gallery that morning had gone poorly. The curator had barely glanced at her paintings before dismissing them as too emotional. Not commercial enough. Those words still stung as she stood in the downpour through the restaurant's gleaming windows. She could see warmly lit tables where people in expensive clothes shared wine and laughter. The world inside looked so different from her reality of unpaid bills and empty refrigerators. She was about to turn away when the door opened. A tall man stepped out, his dark suit immaculate despite the storm. He moved with quiet confidence, but something in his eyes looked tired, almost lonely. When he saw Victoria huddled against the wall, he stopped. "Rough night to be out here," he said, his voice carrying a gentle warmth that surprised her. Victoria looked up, meeting his gaze. His eyes were deep brown, the kind that seemed to hold stories. "Just trying to get out of the rain," she replied, managing a small smile. Without hesitation, he opened his umbrella and stepped closer. "Here, let me help." He held the umbrella over both of them, creating a small shelter from the storm. "Thank you," Victoria said, feeling the kindness in his gesture. "I'm Victoria, Nathan," he replied simply. "Are you hungry? This place has the best soup in the city." Victoria hesitated. She couldn't afford dinner at a place like Celestial, but something about Nathan's genuine concern made her feel safe. "I shouldn't. I was just passing by." Nathan studied her face, seeing past her polite refusal. "Please, let me buy you dinner." No strings attached. Just two people getting out of the storm. Inside the restaurant, they were seated at a quiet corner table. The warm lighting made Victoria's green eyes sparkle as she looked around at the elegant surroundings. Nathan found himself watching her reactions, charmed by how she seemed to notice every beautiful detail. "This is incredible," Victoria said, running her fingers along the smooth tablecloth. "I've walked past this place 100 times, but never imagined the inside was so beautiful." Nathan smiled. He was used to luxury, but seeing it through Victoria's eyes made everything seem new again. "What do you do?" he asked, genuinely curious. "I'm an artist," Victoria said, then quickly added, "and I wait tables. Or I'm trying to find a place that will let me wait tables." She laughed softly at herself. Not exactly a success story. "Art is brave," Nathan said quietly. "It takes courage to create something from nothing and put it out for the world to judge." Victoria looked at him with surprise. Most people either dismissed her art as impractical or offered empty encouragement. Nathan's words felt real, thoughtful. "What about you?" she asked. "What do you do?" Nathan paused for a moment. He was tired of people treating him differently once they knew about his wealth and position. "I work in business. Import and export, mostly. Nothing as interesting as creating art." They talked through dinner, sharing stories about their dreams and fears. Victoria told him about growing up in a small town in Ohio, how she'd saved every penny to move to New York with nothing but hope and a suitcase full of paintings. Nathan found himself opening up in ways he rarely did, talking about the pressure of expectations and the loneliness that came with success. Do you ever feel like you're living someone else's life?" Nathan asked as they shared dessert. Victoria considered the question seriously. "Sometimes. But then I paint. I remember who I really am underneath all the worry and doubt." The storm outside had calmed to a gentle rain by the time they finished eating. Neither wanted the evening to end, but they both felt the pull of reality returning. "Thank you for dinner," Victoria said as they stood outside the restaurant. "And for the kindness. I really needed both tonight." Nathan looked at her, memorizing her face in the soft glow of the streetlights. "Can I see you again?" Victoria felt her heart skip. There was something about Nathan that made her feel understood, valued. "I'd like that." They exchanged phone numbers, and Nathan insisted on calling her a taxi home. As Victoria settled into the back seat, She watched him through the rain-streaked window. He stood there until the taxi disappeared around the corner, his hands in his pockets, looking thoughtful. Back in her tiny studio apartment, Victoria hung up her damp jacket and looked at her easel in the corner. For the first time in weeks, she felt inspired. She pulled out her paints and began working on a new piece, something that captured the feeling of unexpected kindness on a stormy night. Meanwhile, across the city in his penthouse office, Nathan stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan. He couldn't stop thinking about Victoria's laugh. It's the way her eyes lit up when she talked about her art. How genuine she had been. In his world of calculated conversations and hidden motives, her honesty felt like finding water in a desert. He had meetings in the morning, board calls and contract negotiations that would determine the future of his company. But tonight, none of that seemed as important as the memory of sharing dinner with someone who saw him as just Nathan. Not Nathan Cross, billionaire CEO of Cross Industries. As Victoria painted and Nathan stood at his window, both felt the same thing: they had found something real in a world that often felt fake. Neither knew that their paths would cross again in just a few hours, in a way that would change everything. The city hummed around them, full of millions of people living their separate lives. But sometimes, on nights when the rain falls and strangers share umbrellas, the universe conspires to bring two hearts together. Victoria and Nathan had just taken the first step on a journey that would test everything they thought they knew about love, trust, and what it means to be truly seen by another person. Victoria stood in the marble lobby of Cross Industries, smoothing down her best blouse and checking her reflection in the polished elevator doors. She had borrowed the navy blazer from her roommate and spent her last few dollars on a professional haircut. This job interview could change everything. The building stretched 40 stories into the Manhattan sky, all glass and steel that reflected the morning sun. Victoria had researched the company thoroughly. Cross Industries was one of the largest import-export businesses in the country, dealing in everything from luxury goods to essential supplies for hospitals and schools. Victoria Monroe. For the executive assistant position, she told the receptionist, a polished woman in her 30s who looked like she belonged in a fashion magazine. Mr. Cross will see you shortly. Please have a seat. Victoria's stomach dropped. Cross, the name on the building. The name she had researched, suddenly connected to the man from last night. Nathan Cross. It couldn't be the same person. The Nathan she had dinner with was kind and humble, not some powerful CEO. She tried to calm her racing heart as she waited. But when the elevator doors opened and Nathan stepped out in an expensive charcoal suit, her world tilted. He looked just as shocked to see her, his confident stride faltering for just a moment before he composed himself. Ms. Monroe, he said formally, extending his hand as if they were strangers. Please come up to my office. Victoria shook his hand, feeling the same warmth from the night before, but now everything was different. She followed him into the elevator, the silence between them heavy with unspoken questions. His office was stunning, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a breathtaking view of Central Park. The furniture was elegant but not flashy, and Victoria noticed original artwork on the walls, including a piece by an artist she recognized from the gallery where she had been rejected yesterday. Please. Sit down, Nathan said, gesturing to a chair across from his massive desk. He moved behind it, creating a physical barrier between them. Rebecca Sterling, the HR director, entered with a folder of paperwork. She was professional and direct, with silver hair pulled back in a perfect bun and sharp eyes that seemed to see everything. Ms. Monroe, Rebecca began, your resume is impressive, but this position requires someone who can handle high-pressure situations and maintain absolute discretion. Our CEO's schedule is extremely demanding. Victoria nodded, trying to focus on the interview instead of the way Nathan was studying her face. I understand. I've managed multiple jobs while pursuing my art career. I'm used to juggling priorities and keeping confidential information. Tell us about a time when you had to handle a difficult situation, Rebecca continued. Victoria thought for a moment. Last month, was working at a small gallery when a major collector came in angry because a piece he wanted had been sold to someone else. Instead of getting defensive, I listened to his concerns and helped him find something even better suited to his collection. He ended up buying 3 pieces and became a regular customer. Nathan leaned forward slightly. How did you know what would suit him better? I paid attention, Victoria said, meeting his eyes directly. People usually tell you what they need, if you listen carefully enough. Something passed between them in that moment. A recognition of the connection they had shared the night before? But Rebecca was watching, taking notes. The professional atmosphere demanded they maintain their composure. The position pays well, but requires complete loyalty, Rebecca said. Mr. Cross's business dealings are often sensitive. Can you handle that level of responsibility? Yes, Victoria said without hesitation. I believe trust is earned through actions, not words. The interview continued for another 20 minutes, with Rebecca asking technical questions about scheduling software and international time zones. Victoria answered confidently, drawing on her experience managing her own chaotic schedule and her research about the company. Finally, Rebecca closed her folder. We'll be in touch within 24 hours. Thank you for your time. As Victoria stood to leave, Nathan spoke for the first time in several minutes. Ms. Monroe, one last question. What drives you to excellence? Victoria paused, understanding that this question was really Nathan asking something deeper. I believe everyone deserves to be seen and valued for who they really are. When I work for someone, I want them to succeed not just professionally, but personally. Excellence comes from caring about the whole person. It's not just the job title. Nathan's expression softened almost imperceptibly. Thank you. We'll be in touch. Outside the building, Victoria walked slowly down Fifth Avenue, her mind racing. The Nathan from last night, the man who had bought her dinner and listened to her dreams, was actually one of the most powerful businessmen in New York. Had he been lying to her? Testing her? Or was he as surprised by this connection as she was? Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Can we talk? Coffee at 7 p.m. The place on 42nd where we had our first real conversation. And Victoria stared at the message. There was no first conversation at a place on 42nd Street. Then she realized he was being careful, not wanting to reference their dinner in case someone saw the message. He was asking her to meet him at a neutral location. Back in his office, Nathan couldn't concentrate on his afternoon meetings. Rebecca had already called to tell him that Victoria was the most qualified candidate they had interviewed. But the situation was complicated now, sir, Rebecca said, studying his distracted expression. Is there something about Ms. Monroe that concerns you? Nathan looked at his longtime colleague, someone who had worked with his family for over a decade. Rebecca, what would you do if you met someone who saw you as just a person, not as your position or wealth, and then discovered that honesty might be compromised by circumstances? Rebecca raised an eyebrow. That's quite philosophical for a Tuesday afternoon. Are we still talking about the interview? Nathan stood and walked to his windows, looking out at the city below. What if I told you I met her before the interview? By accident? At dinner last night? She has no idea who I am, and I didn't tell her. That's problematic, Rebecca said carefully, but not necessarily disqualifying. The question is whether her qualifications stand on their own merit. They do, Nathan said immediately. She's perfect for the job. But now if I hire her, she'll think it's because of last night. And if I don't hire her, I'll always wonder if I'm punishing her for making me feel something real. Rebecca was quiet for a moment. Nathan, in 30 years of working with your family, I've learned that the best business decisions often come from the heart, not just the head. But you need to be honest with her, whatever you decide. That evening, Victoria arrived at the small coffee shop on 42nd Street 15 minutes early. She chose a corner table where they could talk privately and ordered a simple black coffee, her hands shaking slightly as she waited. When Nathan walked in, he looked different without his corporate armor. He wore jeans and a simple sweater, and his hair was slightly mussed as if he had been running his hands through it. He looked like the man from the rain again, vulnerable and real. Thank you for coming, he said, sitting across from her. I almost didn't, Victoria admitted. I don't understand what happened today. Did you know who I was last night? No, Nathan said firmly. I had no idea. Victoria, last night was the first time in years that someone talked to me like I was just a person. You saw Nathan, not the CEO or the money or the reputation. That meant everything to me. Victoria studied his face, looking for deception, but finding only sincerity. So what happens now? I can't pretend I don't know who you are. You can't pretend you don't know me. Nathan reached across the table, his fingers touching hers gently. I want to offer you the job because you're the best candidate we interviewed. But I also want to see you again because last night was the best evening I've had in years. The question is whether you can separate those two things. Victoria felt her heart racing again. But this time, it wasn't from fear. It was from possibility. I need this job, Nathan. But I also need to know that you trust me to earn it. Then let's try, Nathan said. Professional during work hours. Whatever this is between us, we explore it on our own time. Victoria nodded slowly. But if it doesn't work, if it becomes complicated, we need to be honest about that too. Agreed, Nathan said. Victoria, I know this is unusual, but I think we both felt something real last night. I don't want to lose that because of circumstances, as they talked about boundaries and expectations. Both Victoria and Nathan realized they were embarking on something that could either be beautiful or complicated beyond imagination. But sometimes the best things in life require taking risks, and both of them were ready to see where courage would lead them. 6 weeks had passed since Victoria started working at Cross Industries, and the delicate balance they had established was becoming more difficult to maintain each day. During business hours, she was the perfect executive assistant, managing Nathan's impossible schedule with grace and efficiency. After work, they explored New York together like two people falling in love for the first time. But their secret was becoming harder to keep. Rebecca Sterling had noticed the way Nathan's mood improved whenever Victoria entered the room. Other employees whispered about how the new assistant seemed to have unusual access to their normally distant CEO, and someone was starting to ask questions that made Victoria nervous. Catherine Vale, the company's head of marketing, had worked for Cross Industries for 8 years and had always harbored hopes of catching Nathan's personal attention. She was beautiful, sophisticated, and came from the same wealthy social circles as Nathan's family. When Victoria arrived and began spending time with Nathan outside of work, Catherine's interest turned to suspicion. I saw you and Mr. Cross having coffee yesterday, Catherine mentioned casually as Victoria organized files in the executive conference room. Victoria kept her expression neutral. We occasionally discuss scheduling over coffee. Mr. Cross prefers informal meetings for certain topics. Catherine smiled, but her eyes remained cold. Of course. It's just unusual. Mr. Cross typically keeps his professional and personal lives very separate. That evening, Victoria met Nathan at a small art gallery in Soho. They had started a tradition of visiting different galleries together, with Nathan learning about art through Victoria's passionate explanations, and Victoria seeing the business side of the art world. Through Nathan's experienced perspective, "You're quiet tonight," Nathan observed as they stood before a striking abstract painting. Catherine Vale asked me about our coffee meetings. Victoria said, "I think people are starting to notice." Nathan frowned. Catherine has always been ambitious, but she's also professional. I'll speak with her if necessary. No, Victoria said quickly. That will only make things worse. If you defend me, it proves there's something to defend. They walked through the gallery in thoughtful silence, both aware that their carefully constructed boundaries were beginning to blur. Nathan had never felt as understood as he did with Victoria, and she had never felt as valued as she did when Nathan looked at her art with genuine appreciation. Victoria, Nathan said as they reached a quiet corner of the gallery, I need to tell you something. My board is pressuring me to announce an engagement soon. They think it would stabilize the company's image and improve our family-oriented marketing. Victoria felt her stomach drop. An engagement. It's a business consideration, Nathan said quickly. They have someone in mind, Catherine actually. But Victoria, none of that matters to me anymore. What we have is real. Victoria stepped back, the weight of their different worlds pressing down on her. Nathan, you're talking about board pressures and company images. I'm worried about paying my rent next month. We live in completely different universes. Money doesn't change how I feel about you, Nathan said, reaching for her hand. But it changes everything else, Victoria replied. If we're together, people will always think I'm using you. If we're not together, I'll always wonder if I was just a temporary escape from your real life. That night, Victoria called in sick to work and spent the day painting furiously in her small studio. She created piece after piece, pouring her confusion and fear onto the canvas. By evening, she had made a decision. The next morning, she walked into Nathan's office with a resignation letter. I can't do this anymore, she said, placing the letter on his desk. I love you, but I won't be the reason your career is damaged or the person people whisper about in hallways. Nathan read the letter, his face growing pale. Victoria, don't let fear make this decision for you. It's not fear, Victoria said, though her voice shook. It's reality. We both knew this would get complicated. Nathan stood and walked around his desk, stopping just in front of her. What if I told you I don't care what people think? What if I told you that losing you would be worse than any business consequence? Victoria felt tears threatening. Then I'd say, you're not thinking clearly. Nathan, you built this company from nothing. You employ thousands of people. You can't risk that for someone like me. Someone like you. Nathan's voice rose slightly. Victoria, you're the most genuine person I've ever met. You see beauty in everything. You work harder than anyone I know, and you make me want to be better than I am. Don't diminish yourself. For a moment, Victoria wavered. The love in Nathan's eyes was unmistakable, and her heart wanted to believe they could overcome anything. But then Rebecca Sterling knocked on the door. Mr. Cross, Rebecca said. Entering with obvious concern, the board meeting has been moved up. They want to discuss the marketing strategy and the image campaign we discussed. Victoria and Nathan looked at each other, both understanding that timing was forcing their hand. Victoria picked up her purse and headed for the door. Keep the resignation letter, she said quietly. Give me until tomorrow to clean out my desk. That evening, Nathan sat in his penthouse apartment, staring at Victoria's resignation letter. His phone rang constantly with calls from board members and business associates, but he ignored them all. Instead, he found himself looking at a small painting Victoria had given him weeks earlier. A simple street scene from their neighborhood that somehow captured the feeling of finding home in unexpected places. Meanwhile, Victoria was packing her few belongings from her desk when she found a note she had written to herself on her first day. Prove you belong here? She had thought it meant proving she could handle the job, but now she realized it meant something deeper. The next morning, Nathan called an emergency board meeting. The conference room filled with serious-faced executives, including Catherine Vale, who looked pleased to be included in such high-level discussions. Ladies and gentlemen, Nathan began, I've called this meeting to discuss something more important than marketing strategies or public image. I want to talk about what this company really stands for. He clicked a presentation remote, and the screen behind him showed photos of Cross Industries' charitable work, their employee programs, and their commitment to ethical business practices. We've built this company on the principle that success means more than profit, Nathan continued. It means creating value for our employees, our communities, and our world. Today, I want to extend that principle to my personal life. The room grew very quiet. Nathan clicked to the next slide, which showed a simple statement. Love is not a liability. I'm in love with someone who makes me a better person and a better leader, Nathan said. She's taught me that authenticity and kindness are not weaknesses in business, they're strengths. I'm not asking for your approval of my personal choices, but I am telling you that any marketing strategy based on a fake engagement or manufactured image is not something I'll support. Catherine's face flushed red, and several board members shifted uncomfortably. But Rebecca Sterling smiled slightly and began taking notes. Mr. Cross, said the board chairman, an elderly man named Robert Hensley, are you saying you're rejecting our recommendations entirely? I'm saying that Cross Industries will succeed because of our integrity. Not in spite of it, Nathan replied. And I'm saying that I trust the people of this company to understand that personal happiness and professional excellence can coexist. As the meeting ended and the board members filed out, various states of confusion and concern. Rebecca approached Nathan. "That was either very brave or very foolish," she said. "Sometimes they're the same thing," Nathan replied. "Rebecca, I need your help with something." An hour later, Victoria was in her studio apartment painting again when she heard a knock at her door. She opened it to find Nathan standing there with Rebecca Sterling and a small group of people she didn't recognize. "Victoria," Nathan said, "I'd like you to meet some friends of mine. This is David Chen. He owns 3 galleries in Manhattan. This is Patricia Williams. She's a curator at the Metropolitan Museum. And this is James Morrison. He runs an artist residency program in Tuscany." Victoria looked confused. "I don't understand." "They're here to see your work," Nathan said. "Not because you know me, but because Rebecca told them about a talented artist who deserves recognition on her own merit." David Chen stepped forward. "Ms. Monroe, Mr. Cross described your art, but he was very careful to let us form our own opinions. Would you mind showing us some pieces?" For the next hour, Victoria showed her paintings to the small group. They asked thoughtful questions, discussed technique and emotion, and treated her work with serious respect. When they finished, David Chen offered her a solo show at his gallery. Patricia Williams invited her to submit work for a group exhibition, and James Morrison offered her a 3-month residency in Italy. After the visitors left, Victoria and Nathan stood alone in her small studio. "Why did you do this?" Victoria asked. "Because you deserve to succeed because of your talent, not because of who you know," Nathan said. "I wanted you to see that your worth isn't connected to me or anyone else. You're remarkable all on your own." Victoria felt tears streaming down her face. "Nathan, I love you, but I'm still scared of what people will think, what they'll say." Nathan took her hands in his. "Then let's give them something real to talk about. Victoria Monroe, will you marry me?" Victoria's eyes widened. "Nathan ... OTs, not because of board pressure or company image," Nathan continued, "because I can't imagine my life without your laugh in it, without your art on my walls, without your hand in mine, because you make me want to be the man you see when you look at me." Victoria looked around her small studio, then at Nathan's face, filled with love and hope. She thought about all the reasons it was complicated, all the ways it could go wrong. But then she thought about the way he had brought art experts to see her work, how he had stood up to his board, how he had chosen authenticity over convenience. "Yes," she whispered, then louder, "Yes, Nathan Cross, I'll marry you." 6 months later, Victoria and Nathan were married in a small ceremony in Central Park. Surrounded by friends, family, and several artists from David Chen's gallery, Victoria wore a simple dress she had designed herself, and Nathan wore his grandfather's wedding ring. Rebecca Sterling officiated, having gotten licensed online specifically for the occasion. The wedding reception was held on the rooftop garden of Cross Industries, with Victoria's paintings displayed throughout the space. Catherine Vale had left the company 3 months earlier to start her own firm, and the board had come to appreciate Nathan's honesty and the positive publicity that came from his authentic love story. As Victoria and Nathan danced under the stars with the lights of Manhattan sparkling around them, Victoria realized that sometimes the greatest risk is not taking one. They had chosen love over fear, authenticity over convenience, and each other over the expectations of the world. "Do you ever regret it?" Nathan asked as they swayed to the soft music. Victoria looked up at him, her husband, her partner, her best friend. Only that it took us so long to stop being scared, and in the city that never sleeps where millions of people search for connection and meaning, 2 souls had found their home in each other. Not because it was easy, but because it was real. And sometimes, real is worth everything.